If Gintoki is the soul of Gintama, what is the heart? How about the town, which gives these colorful characters with nowhere else to go a place to call home and even flourish? Officially entering into the latter half of Gintama now, what better story to cover than one of Kabukicho turning into grounds for a war on the verge of destruction? I'm Kazu Trash, and welcome to the 4 Divas arc. Here we are with our very first arc of Season 2, and boy howdy do they come out swinging, with 2 absolutely lovely additions to the cast, in Pirako and Jirocho Doromizu. At a young age, Jirocho abandoned his sickly wife. Side note, there are a lot of sickly wives in Gintama flashbacks, aren't there? Sorachi loves his ill women, I guess. Anyway, he abandoned her, as well as his soon-to-be-born daughter. After nearly 20 years of training while waiting for her father to return, in hopes he would make good on his promise to come back, Pirako never heard a word from her father, so she decided to take matters into her own hands. She hit up a local bar to figure out who the strongest active member of Kabukicho is to take them down so Jirocho could tip the balance of power, so he could finally return home and be done with his work. After getting some obvious answers like Saigo and Jirocho himself, both of them being heroes of the Joey War and all, Kata's subordinates, albeit nobody particularly powerful enough to be named individually from her soldiers, and Katsuo, who isn't necessarily strong in his own right, but is still the most feared individual in the town from being quite tyrannical, as well as being Jirocho's headliner. But then, she noticed one name from those divas wasn't mentioned at all, that being Otose. And upon further questioning, the bartender described Otose as just being a soft old lady. But if you dare try anything on her turf, you'll meet a monster who can hold his own against those big 3 all by himself. The very reason Otose is considered one of the 4 divas with her own territory is because her guard dog is the white Yaksha. Of course, we know Gintoki is probably just out drinking or something, or doing whatever the odd jobs are doing that day. Whatever they do off camera. But to many others, Gintoki is prowling his territory in search of anyone causing trouble, which is undoubtedly one of this arc's major strengths, that being leveraging Gintoki's often glossed over notoriety. Let's take a step back from Gintoki as the protagonist for a second and view Gintama through the eyes of an onlooker, just an average Joe in the world of Gintama, or at least the major events that most people would have heard of in-universe. Number 1, he was a major player in the Joey War. Number 2, he helped the Umibozu take down a giant parasitic alien that was going to destroy the entire city, who knows, maybe even the entire country if this thing wasn't stopped. Number 3, he defeated Nizo the Butcher, a known high-ranking member of the Kiheitai, or rather what was left of him after his body was taken over by a bioweapon. Then that same day escaped a ship full of Harusame pirates after managing to slaughter many of them with the help of a wanted terrorist. Number 4, he saved the town from being ruled by robot overlords. And number 5, the most insane feat of them all, defeating Hosen of the Night, one of the most powerful Yato in existence. I'd even wager the strongest person on planet Earth, and freed Yoshiwara from tyranny. Now that's one hell of a resume, and that's just scratching the tip of the iceberg. I use examples that any average Joe would have likely heard of, but for select individuals, that resume is even crazier. For example, if you are a resident of Yoshiwara, especially one close to Suki, you'll have heard of Gintoki's defeat of Tsukuyo's previous master, and the one running the entire city behind the scenes, Jiraiya the Spider. Or if you're from, or at least in the know of the Yagyu family, you'll know of his and his subordinates, as you might assume, defeats of the top Yagyus. Or if you're a ghost or a stan, you'll have likely heard the rumors of Gintoki defeating Oiwa and freeing the hot springs from her tyrannical rule. And the list just goes on too. That's how crazy Gintoki seems to the public. In recent times, whenever there's a threat to the Kabuki District, guess who's on the front lines defending this town? No, this country with his life on the line. Because it sure as hell isn't Jirocho, Saigo, or Kata. That's right, it's our very own Gintoki Sakata. Every time, no matter the occasion, that man is there fighting tooth and nail for his beliefs. Many of the characters from the shorter, quicker, and seemingly one-off episodes showed back up again to help Gintoki in his time of need. Like Tatsumi the firefighter lady, Tetsuko the swordsmith, and even Heiji the hard-boiled detective and his partner. We finally get to see Gintoki and Otose's love for everyone coming back to love them in the ass. Yeah, I didn't think that one through in my scripts. I was just like, oh, if you bite someone in the ass, you can also love them in the ass for the opposite effect. No, that doesn't work. Everyone besides a few major players that got left out of this arc for some reason. The weirdest vacancy was Tsukuyo, of all people. I mentioned in the reaction, she probably doesn't even know what's going on up here, but that's some high-tier cope. I mean, she, of all people, definitely has informants. Same thing for the Oniwa Bonshu, like we just saw them last arc. You'd expect them, or maybe not Zenzo, because they were kinda assholes to Zenzo in the last arc, but at the very least, Sarutobi, right? I mean, they just helped her out a ton in the Glasses arc. Who knows what she's up to this arc? I can assume the meta reason they're not here is because A, it would be way too many characters in this arc, or 2, they would just be way too powerful. With the Hyaka and the Oniwa Bonshu teaming up with everyone else already there, it would just be a complete slaughter fest for Jirocho and Pirako and all their goons. But I mean, to be fair, Kata's goons are very, very strong, so they could have thrown them in there just to highlight how powerful Kata's goons are. I don't know, just a thought, right? Another cope I can muster up is that Sorachi solely wanted to focus on everyone who Otose helped directly, and not Gintoki, per se, right? Which I can't think of anything off the top of my head for Sachan and Zenzo, by extension, but as for Tsukuyo, the closest thing I can think of is when she hired Seita to help out in the bar, so he wouldn't be pickpocketing. Not a direct connection, but that's still something. In any case, still disappointing nonetheless. But it's not only Gintoki who gets glazed. At long last, the often overlooked Oddjobs trio is finally being recognized as being strong as a unit. Kagura and Shinpachi are now officially seen as beasts in their own right, especially after having defeated Saigo and Pirako in one frickin' blow. Of course, Saigo let Kagura win, but Pirako wasn't planning on losing here, and yet Shinpachi comes out with an absolutely wild move to take her down. She went for a straight jab, then angled it upwards, but then Shinpachi countered by fucking backflipping, slicing her sword into mid-backflip, and followed it up by a slice to her forehead on the fall back down. Jesus, who fed Shinpachi crack? Okay, but enough Oddjobs glaze. Let's get back to the meat of this arc, Pirako's character. And yeah, she's got a few screws loose because of that not-so-great upbringing. What she truly desired deep down is that fatherly love. For her dad to return home as just that, a dad and nothing more. To be a part of the family again, even if she has to become a ruthless killer for him to do so. So why hasn't Jirocho returned home anyway? Was he just a deadbeat dad who left for the milk and never came home? This arc does do a great job at keeping you guessing about what Jirocho's deal really is, much like with Sogo in the Rokaku arc. At first, you'll likely hate the guy for slicing Otose down. With the information provided about Terada, Otose's previous husband, you may assume he simply did it out of jealousy and that he was a truly evil man. But in reality, he made sure it wasn't a fatal wound. It was to protect her, so she would be assumed dead and not be involved further in this war. But at that point in time, Gintoki was just as oblivious as us. He ran as fast as he could to save Otose, but it was too late. When he arrived, Otose had already been sliced open and left to bleed out in front of Terada's grave. And that's when Gintoki entered into a blind rage. Absolutely the most infuriated we'd ever seen Gintoki. He'd foregone all thoughts and had just one thing on his mind: revenge. And that tactic, or rather lack thereof, would have likely worked had it been any other opponent. But Gintoki had finally met an equal. Perhaps a man even more skilled than himself. This isn't like Jiraiya with setup time to place traps and whatnot. No, this is a completely fair fight. In fact, you may even say it should have been swayed in Gintoki's favor since he had the age difference buff. Granted, he still only had the wooden sword, but still, nobody's ever been able to force Gintoki back like this before, especially on even footing like this. Aside from maybe with Hosen, but even with Hosen, he still won that fight with the wooden sword. Despite his age, Jirocho was a hero of the Joey War, a veteran in the same shoes as Gintoki. Before long, it was clear this battle was done. He'd finally met his match and was plainly and simply defeated. And since this is one of the first times Gintoki has been truly outclassed, we've never really seen what would happen to Gintoki's mental state if he did happen to lose. If he didn't have some sort of ace up his sleeve or reason to be confident. After the loss, Gintoki became disheartened. He gave up on trying to save the town and sent his friends away in hopes to save them, while he would enact a suicide mission to defeat Jirocho. Of course, his friends made sure he didn't go through with that, but it was so off-putting to see Gintoki just give up. He lost against Jirocho. He failed to protect Otose. Pirako had betrayed him. Things were looking bad. They had a monstrous force on the opposing side, and Gintoki just submitted. And as a last-ditch effort, attempted to save his friends, which he's just recently started to open up to and do better for. Like with Kagura in the Santa arc. He's finally trying to move forward from his past. Move past the trauma and enjoy life again. And then suddenly a man shows up who is just as skilled as you are and is directly opposing you? And even worse, another survivor from the war. Gintoki was scared. His past was directly opposing him and challenging him. He didn't want to risk what he's grown so attached to. Kagura cried out with a, "If you're gone, life won't be any fun." Tears welling up in her eyes. What a powerful statement. The usual crass, unabashedly rude, and sarcastic Kagura now genuinely begging for Gintoki to join them. Gin responded with a simple yet cold, "Life doesn't have to be fun." I love this part. It shows just how far Gintoki has gone in his own head. This speaks so much louder than any inner monologue possibly could. It's a great example of just letting a scene speak for itself. He revealed his attempt to slip away in the night and fight Jirocho alone without even trying to hear their side, and rely on them for once. Yet, of course, that's exactly when he gets his shit kicked in by Shinpachi for being so foolish. They have been through so much worse than this. They can get through this like they always have. This isn't enough to kill any of them off because Gintoki is going to protect them. Shinpachi goes off on Gintoki with some heartfelt tough love, knocking the sense back into Gintoki. Shin shouted the very ideals he learned from Gintoki back at him in a rage. How could he have given up? This is not the Gintoki he learned to love. Thankfully, after witnessing Shinpachi's anger-filled rants, the crestfallen samurai's metaphorical walls were broken down at last. This town means too much to any of them to just give it up. This is their home. This is the only place that will accept outcasts like themselves. This is the town where they spent the last years making the best moments of their lives. It's so full of life, so full of hilarity, goofiness, and soul. So many people with such cherished memories, all brought together and connected through the mother of the Kabuki District. Someone who will listen to anyone's problem with unjudging ears. Someone who will feed and take in strays in the literal and metaphorical sense. Someone who'd allow a known burglar to be at her side at all times. Or a robot who's shown more than just ones and zeros towards her. Someone who would always be willing to listen and lend a hand, even if it meant she was being used. Otose is magnanimous. She will take in anyone at their worst, murderers and thieves alike. She knows how much this town means to everyone. This arc truly does an amazing job of highlighting the community Kabukicho holds, and how deeply it's all connected. On another note, Jirocho did promise to return home once he was finished with his work. The only thing is that work encompassed keeping Amanto from destroying this town and keeping the balance of power. That, and he needed to fulfill his promise to a certain man, an old friend and rival, Tetsugoro Terada. 20 years ago, he promised that man, a previous rival in love for Otose's heart, like I mentioned before, to protect this very town, as well as Otose herself. That promise, however, was becoming more and more difficult to keep, with Kada, who would later reveal herself to be Harusame herself, exponentially increasing the tension between the four divas as she encroached on their territory more and more as of late, tipping the balance of power ever so slightly as time went on. The most recent action of which was building a casino. Something they'd previously discussed was a no-go, because Jirocho is supposed to own the casinos in Kabukicho, not Kada. I do also love how Pirako slowly realized throughout this arc why her dad had to leave and how foolish she's truly been. While we're on the topic of setup, let's take it back to the beginning of this arc, or the comedy-centric part of this arc. I'd say nothing stood out to me as being gut-bustingly funny, but there were tons of moments that did have me giggling. And the highlight for sure was Pirako struggling to act normally when forced to do normal things, like sitting down at the cafe and trying to just enjoy a piece of cake, or soon falling back to what she knows best, being a Yakuza, which she of course hilariously influenced Kagura to take part in. And then there was the bit with Teru refusing to be saved by Catherine, even leaving her to die by his captors. Like, damn Teru, that's cold. Perfect comedic timing on that whole scene. The selfie they sent to Saigo's phone was like the cherry on top too. Otherwise, it was awesome to see Katsuo walking as Dachshund through the town and coming across Gintoki trying to, what I can only describe as like reverse insurance scam Katsuo's goons. Of course, I know they were trying to incite the war. But there is just something about the new facial expressions in Season 2 that just irk me. They just look off. It really does seem like Sunrise is trying way too hard to make those funny faces, which ends up making the characters almost over-emote, if that makes any sense. A lot of the facial expressions are stretched to such extremes where it feels like Sunrise wants the joke to be the funny face, rather than just letting the punchline speak on its own. I don't know if that's a hot take or what, but that's definitely something I've noticed from the switch from Season 1 to 2. And I'm not sure if I didn't realize it or if they went extra hard with those faces in this arc, because it's already been 2 arcs in the new season. I haven't really said much about it, have I? And now that I have my eyes fixated on the visuals, I can't help but notice the line art in general is just a lot messier this season on the character designs, which is a little strange because it's the exact same character designer from the previous season, Shinji Takeuchi. And back to the actual comedy now, there was a bit that had me cringing hard with Kyoshiro stabbing the Okamas, where Agumi says he recognized his technique as being the blade of the male escort, having been established during the Battle of Booty Loo. Yeah, definitely just random, and in my opinion, unfunny humor. Speaking of that verbiage, wow, is that jarring to watch in the current day or what? Just casually dropping this in the official subtitles. I don't know what that translates to in Japanese, but it's so funny to see that now. Of course, that word has a much more positive connotation in the Gintama universe and is far less of a slur, so much as it is a way to classify the Okama or the drag queens, whatever you want to call them. In any case though, I'd say the comedy hit more than it missed, but it was close this time, more like 60-40. And what really gets it over the edge of that 60% mark is this arc's peak, when Gintoki bursted through the doors of Kata's castle and him and Jirocho instantly knew Kata was about to get her just desserts from the 2 strongest motherfuckers in Edo. The 2 Joey veterans locked eyes and couldn't help but make each other laugh in a maniacal fashion because of the near perfect scenario Kata left for these 2 apex predators as they completely drowned out Kata's confused cries of desperation and bewilderment. Like this right here is quite literally peak cinema, or peak television? Yeah, peak television. Watching the evolution of Kata's mental state quickly deteriorate throughout Gin and Jirocho's continuously slicing down her elite soldiers one by one is a hilarious sight. And by elite soldiers, I mean elite soldiers. On top of her Shinra, there were even Yato and Dakini troops mixed into her ranks. The strongest races in Gintama, period. And Sorachi makes that fact known. But there's only 2 base humans, how? It's truly easy to see what Kata is going through right now. These weren't your standard fodder Harusame like from the Benizagura arc. Nah, these were hardened Shinra, Yato, and Dakini soldiers who had one goal and one reason for living: to protect their queen. Even when they knew they were going to die, they did everything in their power to stop Gintoki and Jirocho, even if it meant getting one last slash in, or a little stab at their ankles before their dying breath, or this absolutely metal way to go out. With a sword through his neck already, he held that very sword in place before he died, so his ally could get a paramount slice down Jirocho's back. And all of their attempts to whittle down their opponents paid off. Gintoki and Jirocho just barely won by the skin of their teeth, allowing Kata to escape. Hell, if Kata had the balls, I don't doubt she could have went over to Gintoki and Jirocho and finished them both off right then and there. But I don't blame her for not doing that. No way. These guys may as well have been demons from hell in her eyes. Also, I clowned on the visuals a bit earlier, but this fight paid off so well. The animators did not hold back, staining the entire floor with blood after what may just be Gintoki's most bloody fight yet. The animation was gruesome, and I love the choreography we got as well. It felt like such a scrappy, realistic battle. Gintoki nor Jirocho were invulnerable here. These Joey veterans are two sides of the same coin, both promising Terada and Otose to protect the town and herself. But we're going about it in completely opposite ways, direct foils to each other. To quote Pirako, both of you are animals bound by the same chain. One has experienced loss, but accepted the responsibility and continues to protect this town, while the other has experienced loss, but has abandoned responsibility and chosen to protect this town using force to conquer it. Two beasts whose interests clash despite sharing the same goal. Jirocho didn't have people to confide in, which is likely why he took such a dark path. A path Gintoki may just well have taken himself if he didn't have the odd jobs to support him. And finally, the two miraculously found their footing once more and finished their duel, where Gintoki won. Yet instead of cutting him down, he only shattered his sword, saving Jirocho to let him live for his daughter and repent for his sins. And of course, the ending of this arc absolutely fucking nailed it. Like, just perfection. Jirocho was finally able to let go of that stressful life and retire with his daughter, surrounded by nature, by beautiful flowers all around, just like Pirako had foreshadowed earlier. I'd say he earned it, a 20-year promise at last coming to a conclusion. Then he embraced his fatherly side as he roleplayed a new beginning with Pirako, finally allowing her to just be a regular girl again and get back so many lost years of familial love. Wow, what an arc, man. Like, unbelievably good. I didn't really get a chance to fit it into the script, but the OST is not to be understated this arc as well. It gives you that western whistle that really makes it feel like there is a new challenger approaching from out in the country. And she's coming with this badass theme song. You better be ready. This is Gintama's next serious arc. Don't move an inch. You know, most of these arcs tend to have some kind of leitmotif that carries through the entire arc, and that was this arc's main theme, which really set the tone for something serious. Now, as for the rating, when I first watched Gintama, this was a 10 out of 10 arc. This was my favorite arc at the time when I first watched it, but now looking back, there's a few things I am not too big of a fan on. For example, like I mentioned, the comedy, and also I wish we got an actual full episode flashback for Jirocho and Tatsugoro, because it almost does feel like this arc could have used an extra whole episode to go deep into those two's relationship and expand upon that. I mean, it literally got to the point where Jirocho had to kill Tatsugoro. Like, that is crazy, and I can't believe we just almost glossed over that. So I don't think it's gonna get a 10 out of 10. Yoshiwara and Flames and Red Spider are still a little bit above this one. And this is where I'm truly torn, because I was gonna put it at a 9. I was gonna give it a 9, but then I look back at what is a 9.5 and what it would be losing to, and that includes Guardian Dog. I really overrated Guardian Dog, and I might need to do another re-ranking of these. As you all know, I'm very indecisive, and this might be another re-ranking here, because that shouldn't be a 9.5. It was good. It was very good. It had me crying. But a 9.5? I think I was blinded by the tears. But we'll see about that. You know what? During the editing process of this video, I am going to re-rank this list. So here is the previous list. And now, that's the new list now. I rearranged some stuff. I don't know what the hell I'm even gonna do, but hey everyone, this is obviously Editing Kev. You'll probably see I changed a lot of things, most notably, and which I was already thinking about in the review, Guardian Dog. I lowered that a solid 2 number tiers, because that number, that being in the top 10 kept irking me. Whenever I looked at it, I'd be like, no, that's not right, that's not right, that's not frickin' right. And now I have to live with that ranking for the rest of my life. And no, I like the 7.5 a lot more. And as you can probably already assume, anything in red either went down in ranking or it went down in number grade. And green is the opposite. So now I funnily enough have no 7s at all, so maybe there'll be a 7 in the future that can fill that slot. And as you can see, now I only have 2 9.5s. And I'm holding the 9.5s for arcs that were so damn good. Whenever I think back on them, I am almost gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna move that up to a 10, but then I'm thinking back and I remember one specific moment that I'm like, I guess I won't. And for Yagyu, that would be the whole part with the gorilla. I really didn't like the gorilla. And for Divas, it's the Agomi scene, and it's the I feel like we should have gotten another flashback, like an actual flashback with Tetsugoro. I mean, we never even saw his face. How did we never see his face or even hear his voice? That's kind of odd. But anyway, that's why it's number 3 though, because those are minor complaints, but not small enough that I can just brush them off for another 0.5 ranking and give that 10 out of 10 spot. Anyway, I'll let my past iteration finish this video off, so you guys can be on your way. So I'm not gonna say anything, but if I had to guess where I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna say number 4. But maybe not. I don't know, man. So of course I'm not gonna actually say a ranking on this recording, but on screen you'll know what I rated this arc, which I'm gonna guess it'll be a 9, right? That's what I'm gonna guess, and I'm probably gonna lower a good few amount of arcs to make that happen. Sorry, I'm so bad for being consistent. I know, I'm awful. Anyway, everyone, like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment any thoughts you may have on the 4 Divas arc. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to stay trash. Peace.